You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
Public safety, major concern in 2021. Why? Well, because it's been a tricky year. 2020, 2021. There's stuff going on out in the streets out there. In Seattle, drive-by shootings are up 100%. Shootings that are at a 5-year high in King County, where Seattle's located. What's happening in the other parts of the country? Well, even cities that didn't defund the police, their crime levels are up as well as far as these kind of shootings go. So we're going to take a look at Seattle today. We're also going to take a little bit of a dive into Chicago. Chicago has some statistics that you're going to want to hear because they're like, you read them and you're like, what? What do you mean? It's like, what? This is nuts. That's what we're going to get into. And why are we doing this on a real estate podcast? Because it's public safety. And people need to know, hey, this stuff is going on. This stuff is happening in your cities. And when you have areas of the city that aren't considered safe, guess what happens to those real estate values? I'll give you a hint. They don't go up. But before we dive in, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, but I read the news that you might not find anywhere else. All right, let's get into it. So drive-by shootings are up 100%, a hundy. Oof, that's not good. We've felt the uptick in gun violence, but now new numbers show the true severity of that surge. The King County Prosecuting Attorney's latest report on shootings in the county, released on Thursday, says 197 people have been shot so far this year, up 61% over the past 4-year average. So you keep hearing this narrative of increased gun violence. And a lot of people want to say, well, you know, they're big cities. They're big cities. You've always got shootings. You've always got that kind of violence. These numbers are statistically much, much higher than just a 10 or a 15% bump, which you might be able to, do a little statistical aberration. They're within the norm. They're within the range. Now, this stuff is clearly shootings are up, right? What we're seeing right now is a very disturbing trend. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Often, one act of gun violence will provoke another, said Dan Satterberg, the King County Prosecuting Attorney. The 197 shooting victims marks the highest number of victims for this time of the year through the second quarter, since the Prosecuting Attorney's office started keeping close records of gun violence data in 2017. So, Dee Dee Sun, here's the tweet. She's the author of this article. Awful but not surprising. New Q1 through Q2, and this is a tweet from her. Data released from prosecutor's office today shows gun violence is way up in King County. Here is some interesting statistics that are not shocking, but you're like, when you see the hard numbers, and this is from the prosecutor's office, 80% of the shooting victims are people of color. Now, I've talked about the whole defund the police, abolish the police, and how that would impact the communities of color. I've talked about that literally till I'm blue in the face, saying, this is not a good call. Those communities are going to be impacted the most. And guess what? Here we are. Not shocking, right? So 80% of the shooting victims are people of color. 70% are ages 18 through 24. 197 people shot so far this year, 42 murdered. Shootings up 61% over the 4-year average. So those are some of the basic statistics. The ones to me, 80% of shooting victims are people of color, and they're 70%, nearly 3/4 are 18 to 24, just that narrow range. Almost out of high school, young adult. And when you start reading all these stories, and when you start reading the stories in Chicago, so many of them are 16, 17, 18, 21, 22, 23, 23, 23, 23. It's an epidemic. It's literally an epidemic. However, help is stepping in, so they say. King County and Seattle leaders pledged on Thursday to tackle gun violence like a public health crisis. This scourge, this epidemic of gun violence affects us all, said King County Executive Dow Constantine. We know violence is a result of so many failed systems, and because for so long, government has shirked its responsibility, said Mayor Jenny Durkin. We know the impacts of systemic racism are real, and they impact every part of daily life, Durkin said. 80% of shooting victims, we already talked about that. Durkin said it's time for governments to invest in healthier and safer communities. Seattle will be putting in $2 million to support the King County Regional Peacekeepers Collective. The city also announced a $10.4 million investment into groups that work on BIPOC safety on Wednesday. So one of the things that I consistently see here is that we're talking about trying to prevent all this gun violence. And yet you see people on the right saying, why don't you put some more cops on the street? If you had more cops on the street, a lot of these shootings probably wouldn't happen. And then if you actually had enough cops to prosecute, to go out and catch these folks and prosecute them, give them some jail time, it might give the other kids behind them in line that are going to be doing these shootings pause. But right now, they know they go out and shoot somebody, odds are they won't get caught. Number two, even if they do get caught, probably not much is going to happen to them. That's just kind of where we're at, right? I mean, every now and then you'll see somebody get, a small jail sentence. It's a small jail time. But there isn't much in the way of repercussions for all of these shooting actions. There's just not. We're not actively going after it. We've just kind of let crime ride. And here we are. And now we're looking at, well, let's go after the illegal guns because, we all know this is a gun issue. No, it's the people doing the shooting. Those are the folks that we need to go after. So if you had some more jail sentences for the folks doing the shooting and actually made it a priority to find these guys, hunt them down, like maybe, in Portland with a gun violence reduction team that got disbanded because the Portland Police Bureau is so short on police officers. So how is the whole defund the police thing working out? How is that working out with drive-by shootings up 100% in Seattle? I mean, you can just ask that question and it's kind of a rhetorical question, isn't it? So now investments are being made, which makes us feel like you guys see us. You're putting some focus and attention on this. Dominique Davis, who is the founder and CEO of Community Passageways. I don't have an issue with putting some money into community programs that basically teaches kids, hey, don't shoot each other. There are other ways out of this. If you've got community programs that support the idea of you don't have to run around and shoot each other, we're talking about street justice here, aren't we? I mean, that's clearly what's going on in Chicago because story after story after story that you read, there are no suspects at this time. Witnesses are not cooperating with the police because they don't want to get shot themselves in retaliation for narking on the people that did the shooting. So we want to work on the programs. We're pushing the programs. We're trying to get the guns off the street, but we're missing the very obvious, going after the guys doing, and gals, let's be honest, it's an equal opportunity crime, but for the most part, it's young men doing these shootings, right? Because when you do catch them, you kind of see, all right. Yeah. So we ask our young people, why do you guys feel like you have to carry a gun? They kind of laugh. Why do you think? We all know the answer to that, Davis said. Because they're defending themselves because other people are shooting them. Right? I mean, this is just out in the open obvious. And yet we're like, let's go after the guys that are, putting the guns on the streets and let's restrict gun control. None of these guns that are involved in these shootings, almost all of them are stolen. Right? So gun registration, none of these criminals, people running around shooting each other, they're not going into Walmart and getting a gun, waiting their 3 days or whatever it is here in the state of Washington. I've never bought a handgun, never owned a handgun, because I don't feel the need to shoot other human beings is my bottom line. But if you want to have a gun and protect yourself, that is your right, correct? And if you go into a store and buy it legally, I have zero issue with that. I just don't feel like in my life that I need one. I do think about it every now and then. I read these stories. I'm like, holy cow, do I need to get a gun? Probably shoot myself in the foot, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to stop gun violence. My team, myself, we're on the ground. We're boots on the ground. We're dealing with this trauma every single day, he said. All right, I respect that, community groups. But I think in order to get these statistics down, you need to put a bunch more cops on the street and kind of level the playing field a little bit. In Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., and there's at least one more. I think there's 4 major cities. They're basically doing a federal crime task force working on the gun issue, not the shooter issue, the gun issue. Oh, it's the gun's fault. This whole thing is ridiculous. So we've seen more than 100% increase in drive-by shootings this year alone, Diaz said. He's chief of police. Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz, it should be interim Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz. Look at me go with my terminology and the police force, is experiencing cases of the highest number of shots fired in the city's history. Seattle Police Department announced a new data dashboard, and I will be following that. It's a cool dashboard that now tracks where shots are fired and shooting cases are happening across the city. So now you'll kind of know, oh, okay, yeah, Rainier Beach got another shooting. And that's where a lot of the shootings have occurred. I'm not naming out Rainier Beach, other than it is statistically where a lot of these shootings have occurred. Some really good basketball players have come out of Rainier Beach. Used to go over there when I was a kid. We'd go over, my dad would take us to Juanita, and we'd watch some guys that ended up in the NBA. I took my kids to watch Garfield and Franklin play kind of 2 really strong inner city high schools with good basketball programs. My kids were little, and it was an experience going to watch those games. You know, you go in through a metal detector, and crowds are pretty boisterous, and different scene than the East Side, but strong basketball, inner city basketball. That's some fun stuff. Diaz added the Seattle Police Department is pushing to get illegal and stolen firearms off the streets, and the department is on track to recover more than 1,000 guns this year. All right, good job. But your drive-by shootings are up 100%. That's the bottom line here. As for outreach, Satterberg said the community groups the county and city are investing in have the best chances of making a difference in young people and helping to curb violence. I don't disagree with that, but you got to do something to quell the nonsense going on right now. Show them some other opportunities for their life. They have a persuasive power that those of us in the system could never have, Satterberg said. Those are smart investments, and if we can prevent some of the homicides, we can pay more than pay for this program. The problem is that's going to take years. That's going to take years because you got some kid who's like 10. He's going to start learning this stuff. By the time he's 18, he's going to be like, yeah, not doing the shooting gig for various reasons that he's learned over time, right? That's the thought here. But the kids that are 16, 17, 18 that are in that lifestyle, that are already going, that are already doing some shooting, you're not going to change their mind. You're just not. I don't think. That's my opinion. It's my opinion as a dad, knowing kids. Once kids start going down a path, pretty tough to turn them around. And if they're in a life of violence already, that's a tough gig to get them turned back around. Not saying it can't be done, but, be realistic about what's going on. You need to quell the shootings right now. And how are you going to get that done? I think you got to put some more law enforcement on the streets. All right. That's just my opinion though. And I'm a real estate guy. So it's kind of like it's like the guy I watch, Vice Grip Garage. He goes in and he gets cars running that have been sitting for 20, 30 years out in a field. It's great entertainment on YouTube. But at the very beginning of his thing, he says, I am an idiot. Don't do what I do. I do this not for instructional purposes, but for entertainment. So a lot of my stuff is along the same way. Is it educational? Well, I'm reading the news. So, but there are news topics that you want to hear and that I think are important. And then I kind of share my feeling on things and we go from there. So yesterday, young teen killed, 28 people wounded by gunfire in Chicago Wednesday and Thursday as city sees 3 mass shootings in a single day. 3 mass shootings. This is Wednesday, early morning Thursday. 2 of the mass attacks occurred within minutes of each other on the west side, but they were not related that we know of. The other near a party bus in Lincoln Park. So a 15-year-old boy was killed and 28 other people were wounded by gunfire in Chicago Wednesday as the city was hit by 3 mass shootings in a single day. So we go on to talk about that, just the individuals. It's horrific to read these things. You got a 14-year-old boy, 17-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy. 8 others were wounded in shootings across the city. One person was killed and 12 others were wounded in shootings Tuesday in Chicago. On Monday, 1 was killed, 13 were shot. And then we have the update. 20 people were shot in 4 separate shootings in Chicago late Wednesday, early morning Thursday that left 3 people dead. I mean, this is on the regular. This is crazy. Last weekend in Chicago, 56 people shot, 11 dead in Chicago over the weekend. That's a weekend in Chicago. All right, let's put that into perspective. So if you're thinking, all right, but Chicago's a really big city. Yes, it is. Seattle is like 770,000 people. Chicago is 2.1 million. So 3 times the size of Seattle, roughly. All right. But statistically, their gun violence is off of the charts. Chicago is, I think, the 3rd largest city in the United States. So yes, you can blame some of that. Well, there's a lot of people there. But when you've got 56 people shot and 11 dead over a weekend, I mean, those are some numbers indicating things are not all that well in Chicago, right? So I'm not going to read about that because that's just nutty. So some of the things that are going on is they're doing programs in Chicago. Here is what Mayor Lori Lightfoot, here's kind of her thing. You'll never see your family again, Lightfoot warns not shooters of other human beings, but the gun traffickers after the mass shootings. We're not blaming the people pulling the trigger. We're blaming the people providing the guns. Because if you start to blame the people that are pulling the triggers, that is a hot potato. That's a hot potato. That might not work out politically. Very difficult, very tricky. So after a trio of mass shootings left 1 teen dead and at least 17 other people injured in Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot sent a strong message to those illegally trafficking guns into the city, threatening to ship them off to federal prison. What if we shipped off the shooters to federal prison? What if we did that? What if we did that for a while? Hey, you shoot somebody, you go to federal prison. Like they should be anyway, right? But that's the reason this is such an epidemic, as we're not catching half of these guys doing the shooting and gals. Let's not be sexist here. But so rarely do you see of a shooting done by a female in one of these type settings. During a media availability Thursday, Lightfoot said that weapons of war have no place in Chicago streets and that the city will work with federal partners to crack down on the flow of illegal weapons. Let's talk about that. Weapons of war. All right. Are we talking about rifles? Are we talking about assault guns? Because most of the weapons that are recovered are stolen handguns. Those are not necessarily weapons of war, are they? No, they're tools used to kill other human beings. That's bottom line. And I've talked about this before. Why do you get a handgun? Well, you don't get it to, go shoot a deer. I mean, you can, that whole pistol thing with the big scope. Yeah, that's kind of a thing, but I don't know. That's a hunting setup versus a small handgun that you pull out, your 9mm, your Glock, and you just go, cap another human being. That's what we're discussing here. Shootings. It's about sending a loud and clear message. If you pick up a gun, if you shoot indiscriminately into a crowd, not only are we going to pick you up, not only are we going to take you to federal court, well, we're going to ship you off to South Dakota and you're never going to see your family again, she said. The choice is yours. We have sent a very loud and very clear message. If you're bringing guns into the city of Chicago, not if you are shooting people, if you're shooting one another in Chicago, if you're bringing guns into the city of Chicago, we're coming for you. We're going to meet you at the border, implying that all of this is due to people bringing guns in from outside. All right. So that's how we can really drop the hammer here on what's going on. We're going to meet you at the border because we know you're coming, because you did a post on Twitter or you tweeted out that you're coming. I mean, this just doesn't make any sense. We're going to meet you at the border. We're going to lock you up and we're going to send you to federal prison. That's what they should be doing with the shooters. Yeah, you shoot another human being, you should go to jail. All right, but that's just my opinion. Lightfoot's remarks come after nearly 30 people were shot on Wednesday alone. In the first shooting in the city's North Lawndale neighborhood, a 14-year-old was shot and killed, and 4 other victims were taken to area hospitals, according to Chicago police. Just 10 minutes later, another shooting occurred nearby, with 5 more people shot, including 4 teens. An 18-year-old was listed in critical condition after shooting after he was hit in the back by gunfire. In the third shooting, which occurred just before midnight, 8 people were wounded when they were shot while standing outside of a party bus on the city's north side. So what they're going to do is they're going to limit the hours of party bus usage. Literally, that's what they're doing. So somebody targeted somebody on the party bus, and they just lit up the crowd of people on said party bus, shooting 8 of them. 8 of them. Police are continuing to investigate all 3 shootings, and Lightfoot says that she is looking to work with federal partners to crack down on gun trafficking, which her administration says has been responsible for the large number of illegal weapons on the city's streets. All right, we know there's a lot of guns on the streets. We have, United States has like 40% of all the guns in the world. I mean, we've got an incredible amount of guns here on the streets. Not on the streets, but just in possession in the United States. But a lot of people have guns and don't shoot others. Right? Do you hear what I'm saying? I mean, they're not out shooting each other. So do we blame the guns, or do we blame those who have the guns illegally and are shooting each other in acts of street justice? Let's be honest. Okay. So we're sending a message to the gun traffickers. We're going to find you no matter where you are. We're sending a message to the victims that we hear you, and we're here to support the work that needs to be done to keep these violent weapons, not violent people, these violent weapons, these weapons of war off our streets, she said. When I read these storylines, I'm like, where is the logic here? Where's the logic? You're blaming a tool for actions of a human being. It's shocking to me. But again, this stuff it's pretty wacky. This is where we're at. Attorney General Merrick Garland, on a visit to Chicago Thursday, announced that the Department of Justice had launched a new strike force to combat gun trafficking in the city. The force will be one of 5 deployed in the initial rollout nationwide, with an emphasis on shutting down trafficking routes between Chicago and nearby states like Indiana. All right, you're going to try and control the flow of guns? Again, these shooters, the ones shooting each other, it's all illegal guns. It's all stolen guns. So are you going to prevent them from stealing the guns? Is that what you're telling me you're going to do? Because the guns are already there. So you're going to try and stop them from coming in. We've already got millions of guns on the streets, and you're going to try and prevent that. You're going to try and prevent somebody from illegally obtaining a gun. Is that that's the best shot that we have at stopping the gun violence happening right now? I don't see that as a reality. I'm sorry. I don't. I can't get on board with that. And maybe it's just because I don't know. It just doesn't seem reasonable, right? It doesn't seem like a reasonable approach. These are dangerous people who should never have weapons in the first place, Lightfoot said. Correct. That's why they are using illegal weapons. They're not going to Walmart and buying one. That is correct. These are dangerous people who should never have weapons in the first place, Lightfoot said. We got to bring them to justice, and we have to rattle the saber of federal time, which these folks in the neighborhoods, they fear the federal time. Okay, so we're kind of going back and forth here, right? We're kind of talking about people doing the shooting. She makes that sentence, she indicates that sentence here, but then she's mainly pointing at the people bringing the guns into the neighborhood. So we've got to bring them to justice, the people doing the shooting. Totally agreed. We have to rattle the saber of federal time, meaning I'm shaking a saber for those of you on the audio portion of the podcast. I'm really shaking the saber of federal time, which these folks in the neighborhoods, they fear the federal time because that means prison and long term. Okay, so we know they fear the federal time. Let's go after them. How about what would happen in Chicago if you had a task force of like 1,000 officers going after those doing the shooting? How long do you think it would start to take have an impact on the community? How would that look? I know it'd be kind of brutal. You send out all these peace officers into the communities and post them up, and it's kind of like in Portland, where the Portland commissioner indicated, even if you had 10 cops on the corner, it wouldn't stop that shooting. I disagree. And the president of the Portland Police Bureau basically said, or Portland Police Association, I can't remember, basically said, yeah, if you had 10 cops in the corner, I basically guarantee you that shooting wouldn't happen. So bigger police presence, throw 1,000 peace officers onto the streets. What's going to happen there? All right, you're going to have some conflict because initially those shootings are still going to keep going. Prosecute some of those people, make an example of them. Is that going to quell the violence? That's kind of my solution. That's what I think. But then again, I'm here in Seattle and our, drive-by shootings are up 100%. So I don't have any great solutions here either. But these are the hard numbers of what's going on. I just read to you the reality of shootings in Chicago. It's horrific. And yet Lori Lightfoot has the gall to kind of say, well, crime's down. Crime is down. All right. You probably want to check in with the families of the victims on last weekend, where we had, what did we have? We had 44 incidences of shootings. We had 44 shootings and 56 people shot. And the reason for that is, I'm explaining this to a bunch of people. You can shoot more than one person in a shooting, right? You can hit 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. The possibilities are endless. We got enough ammo. And so 44 shootings, 56 people, 11 dead. I mean, ask the victims of those families, the families of those victims, how they feel that, is crime going down? Maybe some personal property crime because everybody's been at home throughout the whole pandemic. Maybe some of that has. But then people are also just flat out not calling the police for a lot of stuff. I have a good buddy who's he's been in real estate a long time before I was essentially. He's an investor. He's a few years older than I am, but he had a house in Seattle, and a homeless guy smashed the front door in and went in and started squatting. And so he basically had to go in there, and by the time he got there, he was told, hey, a homeless guy's in your place. And it was vacant. It's in between tenants, something like that. And he went over there, and we were talking about, somebody told him, hey, did you call the cops? Did you call the cops? And he's like, man, this is Seattle. The cops don't care. They're too busy trying to take care of normal crime. So there's a lot of instances of crimes, breaking and entering, that basically just don't get reported because everybody knows, hey, the police have been defunded, or if they haven't been defunded, there's not enough cops on the streets anyway. Chicago being one of those cities. Portland's probably one of the worst. Seattle, not good. Not good, the number of cops we have. 911 response times, not good. These are all facts. These are all facts. And the facts don't care about your feelings. All right, I'm going to leave you with that. That's it for me on this one. Thank you so much for being here. I will catch you on the next episode. We're releasing 2 a day, Monday through Friday, 1 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. Love to have you subscribe, do all that stuff. I'll see you soon. We'll talk then. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.